So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's program. This is going to be a conversation or a chat on a book that is titled Haksar on India's Sri Lanka policy. There's Commodore showing you the book cover. So let me first welcome the authors of the book. Is there an echo? Is there an echo?
Not much.
Not much. So let me welcome the authors of the book.
I think all those who are not speaking may kindly mute themselves so that there is no echo. Please mute yourselves, except for the speaker.
Thank you. So let me welcome the authors of the book, Professor Suryanarayan, the highly regarded Professor Suryanarayan, and the very promising Ashik Bonofer. I use the word promising because Ashik has been commended by none other than Professor Suryanarayan. That I think is a tough task, but you've achieved that. So congratulations. And congratulations to both of you for bringing out this book in a jiffy. A couple of 3 months ago, Professor Suryanarayan had called me and asked me whether it would be possible to get the book released at the Press Institute of India. And that was when we were in the midst of the, one of the phases of the national lockdown or the nationwide lockdown. And I said a physical meeting would not be possible. I suggested that we could do an online, launch, but I told him that I wasn't very confident doing that because he said in attendance would be Mr. Gopal Krishna Gandhi and Mr. Jairam Ramesh. So when I heard their names, I said, I know we are not confident of handling an online thing because, at that stage, we hadn't started our webinars yet. Much later, I happened to watch a video. And it was a surprise for me because nobody had told me about it. And there was Professor's book launched and both Mr. Gopal Krishna Gandhi and Mr. Jairam Ramesh speaking, as with a couple of others here. And I was actually happy to see that have happened, to see that had happened. So what struck me then was why could we not have a more broad-based discussion on the book, not just on the book, but on the book and roundabout. And so I called Professor, and he was quite willing, and he said, yes, let's do that. So thank you, Professor, for agreeing. And because of your yes and the idea I had, we are here together this evening. I must also mention that the Press Institute of India had earlier hosted Professor Suryanarayan at the launch of two of his other books. One was called Together in Struggle, which looked at India-Indonesia relations during 1945 to 1949. And then there was another book called Refugee Dilemma, Sri Lankan refugees in Tamil Nadu. Both were launched in 2018. And I'm happy that the Press Institute of India is associated with this in some way. And I'm also very happy that the Center for Asia Studies, which is headed by Commodore Vasan here, is also a part this evening. The next challenge was to find a panel that would be able to discuss this book. And I must tell you that I have great pleasure that we have on the panel this evening three of India's most distinguished officers, government servants, Indians, call them whatever you like, but three people who have served India gloriously well for many years and for decades, and who continue to do so in different ways after retirement, through their lectures, through their training programs, by sheer mentoring and advice, and also by writing, among other things. So great pleasure to have you on board, Mr. Heblikar, Mr. Pratap Heblikar from Bangalore. Thank you so much for agreeing to come, and I'm delighted to have you here this evening. Thank you very much, Commodore Seshadri Vasan, who heads the Chennai Center for China Studies, but today is here in his capacity as the head of the Center for Asia Studies. Commodore has been very supportive of our programs, and I'm immensely delighted that he is here this evening. Thank you, Commodore. Thank you, Commodore Udai Rao from Bangalore, for joining us this evening. It's a pleasure to have you once again for one of our programs. I remember you having joined us earlier, a couple of years ago, or maybe 3 years ago in Chennai. Great to have you. Great to have you. And all of you will be introduced shortly. But before that, let me move on to another person who is important this evening. And without him, we will not be able to have this program moderated. When I was thinking about who I should get to moderate the program, I didn't have to look very far. It was my good friend, a senior journalist, Mr. T. Ramakrishnan, whose very book called An Ethnic Conflict and an Accord was also launched and discussed at the Press Institute of India. And when I spoke to him, Mr. Ramakrishnan readily agreed, and I'm very happy to have him here this evening. Welcome, Mr. Ramakrishnan, and thank you once again for your support. For those of you who do not know Mr. Ramakrishnan, he is the son of Mr. Ashok, one of the most influential writers in Tamil literature post-independence, whose writing was marked by simplicity and clarity. Ramakrishnan had his first short story published when he was only 11 years old in a Tamil weekly. Having come from a politically conscious background, Ramakrishnan, not surprisingly, chose journalism after completing 2 postgraduate degrees in commerce and political science. He joined the Hindu in October 1992 and is now associate editor. In 2015 March, the Hindu asked Mr. Ramakrishnan to serve in Colombo as Sri Lanka and Maldives correspondent. He did so for 16 months till August 2016. During his stint in Colombo, he interacted with a wide range of people of different hues, from President Maithripala Sirisena to Prime Minister Ranil Wickramasinghe to Tamil leaders Sampathan, Mano Ganesan to Dinesh Gunawardane and Udai Gamanpilla. His articles filed from Colombo covered the status of life of those who got back their lands held by the Sri Lankan armed forces for years, the progress of implementation of the housing scheme funded by the Indian government, and the living conditions of those who returned to the northern province after living in Tamil Nadu as refugees for years. He also wrote a number of articles on the hill country Tamils, or Tamils of recent Indian origin, one of the most neglected communities in Sri Lanka, and he continues to write about them. But today, this evening, Mr. Ramakrishnan will speak more in his personal capacity as a senior journalist and from his experience, drawing from his experience in that country and here. We look forward to an interesting and enthralling conversation. Over to you, Mr. Ramakrishnan. You can moderate the program after introducing the speakers. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Sashi, for your nice words. Friends and distinguished panelists, let me invite you all to this evening's event, which Sashi calls a fireside chat or a freewheeling discussion. As you all know, the discussion is based on a book by Professor V. Suryanarayan and Ashik Bonofer, both from the world of academia, on Sri Lanka. The book, Haksar on India's Sri Lanka policy, has been prompted by another work, The Intertwined Lives, P. N. Haksar and Indira Gandhi, which was written by former Union Minister Jairam Ramesh. Today, there are three distinguished panelists, Mr. P. M. Heblikar, Commodore Udai Rao, and Commodore R. Seshadri Vasan, the last two of whom are products of the Indian Navy, both having served their institution for over 30 years. I have three tasks to perform. One is to introduce the book briefly, which is Haksar on India's Sri Lanka policy. Second, to introduce the panelists and professor. And the third, to moderate the whole discussion. Before I begin, let me state the basic rule, which is different from other such events. I'm not going to request the three panelists to speak in sequential manner, one after the other. They are free to interject or intervene immediately after the other person makes his point. This is why Sashi calls this event a fireside chat, which I am sure is going to be intense and profound, but not fiery. After the panelists complete what they want to say, I would request both Mr. Ashik and Professor Suryanarayan to speak. Mr. Ashik will speak for 3 minutes, and Professor, being the principal of the book, will take 15 minutes. As for members of the audience, if they have questions or comments to make, I would request them to send them in writing through chat box so that I can read them out and get the replies from either of the panelists or professor. The total time available is 45 minutes, Sashi?
Yeah,
Sashi, is it
yes.
45 minutes?
Yeah, 45 minutes to 1 hour at the most, I think.
Okay,
Yeah,
fine. Okay.
yeah.
So I request all of you to keep this in mind while making your point. The book is a slim one, as you all know. There is running to a little short of 100 pages. A few aspects of the book need to be highlighted. One, the statement, there is no pure race in Sri Lanka, which I think is of universal relevance. I don't think that there can be no pure race in anywhere, even in India also, anywhere in the world. The authors quote Mahavamsa and other sources, according to which there are many points of convergence between the Sinhalese and the Sri Lankan Tamils in terms of their roots. Two, the book categorically made it clear that India from the beginning, I mean from the 80s, that's what I mean, never had the idea of supporting the concept of Tamileelam, even though it would not adopt hands-off approach, which was the case throughout the 1980s. Having said that, I would say that I did not get clarity from the book about the rationale or inherent strength of India's mediatory, militant, supportive policy that was adopted between 83 and 87. Even though one chapter has been devoted to the 87 Accord, the book has not discussed much about the strength or weaknesses of the essential feature of the Accord, devolution through provincial councils, a topic of great relevance and importance in Sri Lanka. Let me stop here with my take on the book and introduce the panelists. Mr. P. M. Heblikar is the managing trustee, Institute of Contemporary Studies, Bangalore, and former Special Secretary, Government of India. A specialist in insurgency and counter-insurgency in India's northeastern region, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and Nepal. He had supervised China-related work and developments in South Asia and Southeast Asia. He held several sensitive appointments, both at headquarters and in the field. He was decorated twice for meritorious service in 1995 and distinguished service in 2002. Commodore Udai Rao is an alumnus of the Naval Academy in Kochi. A specialist in missiles and gunnery, He holds a PG degree in Defense Studies from Madras University. Between 1978 and 80, he did a course in the field of his specialization in the then Soviet Union. Commander Rao, in his long innings at the Navy, held various positions, both ashore and afloat. To name a few, he was Indian Naval Commander as part of the IPKF at Kankesanturai, Northern Province, Sri Lanka in 1987, and Chief Staff Officer Operations at Navy Office, Chennai, where he oversaw operations in the Park Bay, Gulf of Mannar, and in the waters around Sri Lanka. He was also a Director Maritime at the Cabinet Secretariat, where he handled strategic and security issues, and held the post of Principal Director Naval Intelligence at Naval Headquarters, New Delhi. Commodore R. Seshadri Vasan, also a product of the Indian Navy, is head Strategy and Security Studies, Center for Asia Studies, India, and Director, Chennai Center for China Studies. Commodore Vasan has had a distinguished career. His wide-ranging appointments, both at sea and ashore, include command of warships, appointment in the carrier-borne wing of INS Vikrant, Chief Staff Officer Operations at Southern Naval Command, and a director at the National Aviation Staff at NHQ in charge of air operations and training. He commissioned a major naval air station, INS Rajali, close to the east coast of India, and commanded another air station, INS Garuda, on the west coast. Commodore Vasan was on the faculty for over 2 years at the Naval War College that trains several senior level officers from all the three services. Finally, the man of the moment, Professor V. Suryanarayan. He's one of leading specialists in South and Southeast Asian studies. He received his PhD from the Indian School of International Studies in 1968, after which the school was merged with JNU, New Delhi. He had taught at colleges affiliated to several varsities, such as Bombay University, Marathwada University, and Northeastern Hill University, Shillong. For over 20 years, he was associated with the Center for South and Southeast Asian Studies, University of Madras, first as founding director and later as senior professor. Professor Suryanarayan has authored many books, at least 4 of which pertain to Sri Lanka. He has been associated with the 2 think tanks, Center for Asia Studies and Chennai Center for China Studies. He was a member of the International Monitoring Team, which monitored the presidential election in Sri Lanka in 1999. Let me kickstart the discussion with a counterfactual question to Mr. Heblikar. Mr. Heblikar? Okay. The book talks of the likely impact on Tamil Nadu in the event of Jaffna falling to the Sri Lankan army during Operation Liberation in May 1987. Of course, the Sri Lankan leaders, particularly Sinhalese leaders, would say that had the Sri Lankan army been allowed to have its full run, it would have vanquished the Tigers. But for Indian intervention, that didn't happen. There is also another view, which was at least shared by one former High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, that Sri Lanka army would not have vanquished the Tigers. So do you think, my question to you, Mr. Heblikar, do you think that the Sri Lankan army would have vanquished the Tigers but for Operation Purmalai?
Let's both the aspects in their own way. What would the Sri Lankan army have achieved had it reached the shores and tried to say that they had vanquished the LTT or the militants? It would not have happened. I think if you need to undertake such large-scale operations where you want to rid yourself of the inhabitants or the militants, you need even more force to hold your ground. I don't think it was possible at that point of time. Yes, the Indian intervention did restore balance to the situation, and where we also realized, like we did in 2001, that neither side was in a position to deliver the knockout blow or come nearer to creating conditions for a reconciliation or peaceful settlement of the problem. So in my view, at that point of time, there was no great thinking that the Sri Lankan army would have taken hold of the situation.
But were the Tigers so powerful at the time that is, they would have acquired their strength in terms of manpower and other ways later? But can you say that in 1987 they were more powerful than what they were subsequently?
At that point of time, I think the Sri Lankan army, throughout its history at that point of time, had never seen a situation as such. And when you are at the forefront of counterinsurgency operations, there is a risk that you take in trying to understand what the enemy is doing. And I think the militants had the facility of surprise, the element of surprise in their activities, and they knew that they were operating on a ground where they had some advantages. I don't think that the Sri Lankan army would have been in such a position that it could have faced more difficulties from the militants at that point of time.
Ramakrishnan, may I respond?
So there is 1 minute.
On this point.
Okay, but you be brief. That is because I need to ask.
One of the objectives of India's policy was not to permit a military solution to the ethnic problem. In Operation Vadamarchi, when the Sri Lankan army was pushing, it was LTT and Balasingham who were approaching New Delhi, you must intervene. To say that LTT would not have been defeated, even according to LTT, is not correct. We intervened, which led to, in fact, the local representative Rao, which I mentioned in the book, Chandrasekharan, met Ravindran, the DGP of police.
Right.
Both of them went to MGR and told him, and MGR, by the time had lost his voice, but he said, if Jaffna falls, Tamil Nadu will burn. The matter was reported to Delhi, and that was also another reason why New Delhi did the airdropping of.
Okay. Commander Rao, you have anything to say on this, Commander Rao? On the 87 operations, that is the Operation Vadamarachi by other operation.
No, I don't have specifically, but what I can say is that considering that I have served in Palali and KKS.
Yeah.
So considering that the type of, the resistance the LTT gave the Indian army and had them actually on the run in several encounters,
okay,
I think they would have definitely had an upper hand on the Sri Lankan army.
Okay.
See, going by what they were, the kind of fight they put up to the Indian army. You see, any regular force finds it difficult to operate against a guerrilla force.
Okay.
That is my view.
Yes. Right. But in your assessment, from where they would have got the training and they got their arms and...
You see, Ramakrishna, I must tell you this. Now, in 2009, when this whole thing folded up,
yes,
you see, you will recall that the Sri Lankan Navy intercepted 6 LTT ships.
Okay.
And where did they intercept? 1,000 nautical miles south of Colombo.
Okay.
1,000. I hope you're aware of this.
Yes.
This is the issue which actually hastened the end of the LTT when they were wiped out. So the question is, the arms, what you were asking, always came by sea. They got it from places like Malaysia. The diaspora was supporting them in many places. Okay, even some European nations were supporting them. So the problem was that initially the Navy did not realize that it was being transferred so far. But finally, where did the Sri Lankan Navy get this input? How could small Sri Lankan naval vessels go 1,000 nautical miles? Was there any input given by us?
Right.
That is a question that you need to ask.
Right.
So in terms of what you asked about training and support, we also gave them, India also gave them support. There are some issues which I know, which I cannot, obviously, because this is being streamed on Facebook, I notice, I cannot say. My brother-in-law is a former Air Force officer. He is no more. He died in an air crash. And he was involved in something. So I will leave it there. Do you get that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If I can
The
add,
voice is not audible.
let me add two
Can
things.
I just come in?
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Seshadri.
No, I just wanted to bring in another issue, and this is related to the Big Brother syndrome that came about and was strengthened because you violated the airspace of a friendly country. And this is a serious issue, and the neighbors started looking at us in a very suspicious manner to say that India has made it a habit to go around intervening in neighborly affairs, including in sovereign countries' affairs. If you recollect, if you move forward, when it came to Maldives, when we had an unfriendly regime there, and there was a lot of pressure on India to say they must go and intervene in Maldives. Luckily, we did not do it, and we allowed the local systems to throw out the government that was unfriendly to us. So it does throw up different questions related to bilateral relations in the neighborhood, because now Nepal has fallen out. China is trying to woo others out there. So, but luckily, I think we've come quite far from 1987, where the neighbors are a little more confident that we are not going to intervene directly. This was total overt support to a militant group that was there. Only after the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi did we now change our approach to the support to LTT. Otherwise, we are openly supporting them. So I think it did show India in very poor light in terms of how we deal with our smaller neighbors. And that's a point we must keep in mind.
But what would have been the rationale behind this militant support policy? Of course, the mediatory plus militant support policy of the 80s. I mean the 80s and the 80s.
Like Udai said, there are a lot of things which are not in the public domain.
Right.
But when you put 2 and 2 together, many of these show up as 5. So you need to look at this figure of 5 and 2 and 2 are added. No, but there's enough in the public domain to say, what are the compulsions? The old issue of Voice of America not being allowed in Sri Lanka.
Right.
That, we were indirectly part of the Cold War bloc, though we did not say so. There are a lot of support to Russians because of the fact that in 1971 we were supported by them. We continue to get a lot of arms and ammunition from them, and America was not directly supported. It's only now in the last 15 years or so that we are engaging with Americans. So there was reluctance to allowing Sri Lanka to be used as a proxy for America, who wanted to compete with Voice of America. So there are a lot of wheels within wheels, and it was the decision of Rajiv Gandhi to say we will support LTT. And one was, of course, some of the issues which are come out in this book also, which Professor Suryanarayan has brought out, related to how Tamils were treated there. And therefore, there was this Tamil constituency, both from Tamil Nadu and elsewhere from the diaspora, which wanted them to be supported. And that's why I think India got actively involved. It was, in hindsight, perhaps wrong to do so.
If I can just add one word here, Ramakrishnan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The answer to your queries lies within the 95 pages of this book.
Okay.
When I'll tell you one thing. When I was posted in Australia in 1982, I had the opportunity of meeting Mr. Amritalingam, then who was the TULF leader. And he did tell me two things, which I still remember. He says it was not the intention of the TULF to seek a separation from a united Sri Lanka, and that he did not personally talk about an armed revolution against the government in Colombo. And then he went on to explain to me, I had no interest in the kind of politics that was taking place in the south of the country, because my interests have always been to the northeast and to the southeast. But thereafter, when this discussion took place with him, then we could realize that what was the impact of what the gentleman was talking about. But yes, to what like Vasan says and what Udai says, there could be many things that are within the knowledge of the three of us, but something that cannot be aired publicly. But however, what the answer to your question lies within the 95 pages of this book.
Okay. But were there external forces that were in action which ensured the defeat of, what shall I say, the IPKF, or that is the purpose for which IPKF was sent? Were there any external force that was in action in the neighborhood of Sri Lanka that ensured the failure of the Indian intervention?
Yeah, Ramakrishna, can I take that question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. You see, this is why I interjected is because certain pages of this book, Professor says that, the fishing boats strayed into Sri Lankan waters.
Right.
What are the external forces? External forces, Tamil Nadu, politics. It is raw, which ensured the defeat. Okay. Why? Because Professor is saying that the boats strayed into Sri Lankan waters. Let me tell you, I have patrolled the IMB Park Bay from Nagapatnam to Mandapam and Rameshwaram. Every evening, about 600-700 boats leave Rameshwaram. We used to stand 3-4 boats of ships used to patrol IMBL, and we had instructions to stop them. We had loudspeakers with boards. They just did not listen to us. A fisherman does not require anything. He knows where the fish is. He doesn't stray. He goes there. They get shot and they'll come back. Okay. Then they will say that we were shot by the Sri Lankans who crossed into our side. That is one thing. Secondly, the author says that this is crossing the IMB is a civil offense. Why are the Sri Lankan Navy shooting? I don't agree with this philosophy. When the Sri Lankan Navy is faced with an existential crisis, they can't distinguish between the LTT and Tamil. Why won't they shoot? You are violating IMBL. That is the second point. Third point is Park Bay smuggling. He's mentioned, all these are mentioned in the book.
Yes.
I am trying to counter them with no malice toward the professor. I am talking as a naval officer patrolling the IMBL. Park Bay at night, I used to be on patrol on NS Kavrati, in the 80s. Every night there is to be on a radar called Dawn, high-speed contacts traveling at 40 to 50 nautical miles. Within 30 minutes, they have gone from northern Jaffna to Toputurai, Kodikarai, Nagapatnam, all these places. Right? I know the entire Park Bay, top to bottom. I'm not trying to show off my knowledge. What I am saying is that these people used to, get total support from Tamil Nadu. In fact, at one time, there was a time when the Navy wanted to fold up the detachments. And the first one to run to Delhi were the Tamil Nadu police through Jayalalitha saying, no, don't take that, because they were happy to let us do the dirty work while they were looking the other way. Ball bearings, beedies, lungis, everything was coming from Tamil Nadu, Madurai and all those areas. So the book tries to make out as though it is some, I don't know what to say, but there were total tacit support of the Tamil state. This is the external force. The IPKF were led down by the by the Tamil Nadu government. Basically, the Tamil constituency.
Right. But I meant the external force by any foreign country, number one.
I know what you meant.
Fine.
I felt this wasn't worse than any foreign force.
And then number two, There is a view in Sri Lanka and also among many others that IMBL was drawn in an unfair manner. There is
Yeah, see, the IMBL was dog-legged around Kachativu.
right.
Now the professor says that the Kachativu was ceded.
Okay.
But the center, I think 2-3 years ago, in affidavit to the Supreme Court, has said
Okay.
Kachativu was never ceded to Sri Lanka.
Oh.
You see? So there is a dichotomy in this. The center is telling the Supreme Court that this was never a part of India, irrespective of what people say.
Yes, yes.
This is affidavit about, I think, 2-3 years ago
Yes, about 10 years.
to the Supreme Court.
Yes, yes.
So that is very clear to at least from the central government. I'm not talking of Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu may have its own constituency.
Right, right.
It was not ceded. That means it was never a part of India.
Right. But, this is to Commodore Vasan. And of course, there is a chapter in the book which says that, which is titled as Sri Lankan Tamils, are they pro-India? Okay. Of course, they refer to the travails of Tamil Nadu fishermen in the Park Bay. So in the light of your experiences, what is your take? That is, how do you view this, whether the any unfair treatment has been done to fishermen of Tamil Nadu? Are the fishermen of Tamil Nadu, are they more belligerent? Are they more aggressive because of their...
Yeah, I know. Having been the regional commander of Coast Guard for 3 years,
Yes, sir.
Before the Ilam 4,
Right.
almost on an everyday basis, we used to get this, faxes from the Sri Lankan High Commission.
Okay.
And this was, one was related to, repatriation.
Okay.
The other was related to intrusions in their areas. So this was very regular. And we had our own ships operating from, various places. We also had the Coast Guard Dorniers and the naval Dorniers operating from what is today INS Parandu, Uchipalli in Ramanathapuram.
Okay.
So, like Udai rightly brought out, I've made 13 or 14 visits to Ramanathapuram. All you had to do was sit in that guest house in the morning and see the number of vessels which are going out.
Okay.
It is not that they did not know where the IMBL was.
Okay.
It is just that there is no fish on our side for one simple reason. There's been over-exploitation.
Okay.
I have also used trawling, which is banned. In fact, Professor Suryanarayan will watch this fact. We've had some recent meetings about 4 or 5 years ago, which was organized by the BJP. And we had some NGOs from Sri Lanka coming here and our own fishermen groups which are meeting them.
Okay.
What was surprising was that our fishermen wanted an extension of another 5 years for fishing in Sri Lankan waters and using trawling.
Okay.
And finally, when they objected to this, and what they said was, they were magnanimous, I must tell you, and said, you can allow your country boats to come there using the so-called historical rights of fishing, but not your trawlers. So our fishermen, I was there at that meeting, I think Professor Narayan was also there, and they said, can we now at least have it for 3 years? What sort of a nonsense is this? That, on one hand, we are saying that trawling is banned, and it's entirely because of trawling that there is no fish on our side, and you want to do the same thing to the fishing grounds in Sri Lanka? If you go back and look at the fishing pattern even today, go right up to Delft Island. It is not just they're just crossing the IMBR. They're going all the way to Delft Island, and they are, pretending that they are in Indian waters. And when they're apprehended by the Sri Lankans, they say, no, we are apprehended in Indian waters. The Sri Lankan Navy does not come into Indian waters. They do not cross the IMBL. I can watch for this because every quarter I used to attend the IMBL meetings. Once it used to be on our ship, and another time it used to be on their OPVs. And we used to go there by either hovercraft or by helicopters, land there, compare the charts. They would bring their radar pictures, they would bring the charts, and when we compared the picture, it was very clear it was our fishermen who were violating. So, unfortunately, the government, Tamil Nadu government, has not been supportive of the, they want to pass on the blame to the center and say it is the Indian Navy and the Coast Guard that should control this. Now, how do you control this when all the keys are here in Tamil Nadu? In fact, the fishermen are registering themselves, they get a subsidy on diesel. And this subsidy does not come if it does not register. Why can't it be curbed? They go think that they are out there for fishing for 4 days. It is not the case. They are selling diesel. So there are a lot of these unfair practices, and to support them continuously, I think is unfair for a big nation like India, which is now virtually eating into the Sri Lankan fishermen. Majority of them are, let me tell you, are
Tamils. Of course.
at them. No, a lot of these Tamil Sri Lankan fishermen are Tamils.
Yes.
They are not Sri Lankans. And you know, it's
Okay.
unfortunate that we
Entirely.
are eating into their grounds and you know, coming into their ways. It is very unfortunate. So you know, the size of Sri Lanka is half of Tamil Nadu. What is the
Right,
size of India? India cannot look after these interests. It's very, very unfair.
But the one,
Ramakrishna,
yes, sir.
I'll just interject. You see,
Solunga.
when I was CSO Ops in Tamil Nadu,
Okay.
Chennai,
Right.
every time there was a firing,
Okay.
as CSO Ops, I used to be called to that Fort St. George.
Okay.
You see, because political turmoil used to be there, one dead body. And,
Okay.
you know, a lot of questions would get, what is the Navy doing? What is the Coast Guard doing? Why can't you protect? Why is the Sri Lankan Navy coming to our side? It's not that the people there did not know. They were only soft peddling.
Okay.
And they will say that they have spoken, the Chief Secretary has spoken to NOIC, has spoken to the Coast Guard chief. Actually, bullshit. They were just trying, you know, they wanted to actually pressurize us.
Okay.
They're supporting the fishermen who have actually gone the other side and
Right,
claiming that the Sri Lankan Navy has come this side. Every incident, we used to get called to CSO, to the Chief Secretary or that his deputy. And this would be discussed and we'd come back. Every time we gave them the same inputs. Nothing happened. Nothing changed.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, but one point is that IMBL has not been drawn in a fair manner. So, what were no, that is why they had to.
You see, IMBL has been drawn. Okay, it is being patrolled. Only thing has been dog-legged around Kachutevu. But as Commodore Vasan said, these people would go all the way in Delft and other islands. They know where to go because they're going after the fish. Okay, it's not that they don't know. Okay, and smuggling was rampant, diesel smuggling, all that was there. So any contention that the IMBL is unfair, maybe only around that Kachutevu portion. But these people used to go in the north as well.
Right.
Smuggling was being done all the way from Karaitivu.
Okay.
Not smuggling, fishing, sorry.
Right.
Fishing. Karaitivu in the north, right up to the very south.
Right. But would it have
not only Kachutevu?
Right. But would it have happened without the connivance of the authorities?
Which authority?
Which authority means that those who are supposed to be guarding the international waters or
No. You see,
waters or Navy, Coast
Guard.
The collector, when you say that for years together,
collector sitting, I think, in Ramanathapuram,
right,
to call us and said, "How are you permitting?"
Okay.
I said, "You come with me on the boat and tell me how to stop the 600 fishing boat crossing. Do you have permission to fire?" He said, "No, don't do anything of that sort."
Okay.
So the issue is the Navy and the Coast Guard. I can speak for the Navy and to some extent the Coast Guard. IMBL meetings also, I have also attended in that area. I was there for more than 6-7 months. The issue is simple, that nobody wanted to bell the cat. How come these people are crossing the IMBL, going on the other side in violation of all agreements? International, it's an international issue.
Right.
Okay, and I'm sure the world knows that we are doing without any, without any concern for the Sri Lankan people.
Right. So let me
just one point I would like to add.
Yes, sir.
If I may.
Yes, please.
This is in 2002. For the very first time, 2 Indian Coast Guard ships visited Bangladesh.
Okay.
And I was the regional commander, and I was supposed to go to Chittagong and Dhaka.
Okay.
And I was to be briefed in Delhi by Joint Secretary East.
Right.
So I went there, and they're not too worried about this visit as such. They said, "What is happening to fisheries in Tamil Nadu?"
Okay.
So I gave this position. Exactly what I've said today was what was conveyed to the Joint Secretary. She was a lady. I forget her name now.
Okay.
She said, "Commodore, please tell all your people to turn the other way when our fishermen cross."
Okay.
So this was the official stand to say that, let the Navy and the Coast Guard not intervene in the violation of the IMBL by our fishermen, because it was political. We are not going to shoot our own fishermen, right?
Okay.
To do that.
Right,
It's not our task. It is our task to protect them, particularly in the Coast Guard. You are required to protect your fishermen. But when it has the state sanction and it has the central sanction indirectly, what do you expect our fishermen to do? They are encouraged. They are encouraged to violate on a daily basis. Just because you cannot grow vegetables and fruits in your garden, can you go to your neighbor's garden and pick it up just because it looks nice there?
Right.
I think there is no decency as a big nation.
Yes, sir. Let me go to one issue that has been bothering, of course, people on the other side of Sri Lankan Tamils. Whenever you talk about IPKF, many people refer to the excesses committed by the members of the force, or some certain sections of the. How do you view this episode? There have been some, I think, novels written in Tamil by Sri Lankan authors also about the way they were treated by Indian forces. Now that it's all over, 30 years have gone, how do you view this episode? To Mr.
Very simple.
Heblikar,
I think it's very, very simple. I will prefer
Vasan,
to ask Colonel Suryanarayan, who is here, because he also has been in clarify. But I would like to tell you that any such report that is made, whether it's the Army or the Navy or the Air Force or whatever, the action is always swift. Nothing is condoned. If there has been violation, I don't know how many were there. I'm sure there's a record, because Sri Lankans Tamils were very prompt in accusing the IPKF of all these violations. Then whatever was reported, even if there were one or two, they would have been very minimum. And if they didn't happen, whoever was concerned has been punished immediately. It happens, like I said, the meting out of the justice is extremely swift. The persons would have been dismissed without pension. They would have been tried by a court of inquiry or a board of inquiry. So I'm not saying that, there may not have been any violations in cases, but it is not to the extent that LTT made out, because they were trying to talk to their diaspora. They're trying to accuse the IPKF of violations. They wanted IPKF out of that, because here was IPKF, which was fighting somebody else's battle on somebody else's ground. Colonel Hariharan, sir, I would like you to kindly pitch in.
Colonel Hariharan?
Can you, Ramakrishnan,
yes, sir.
Can you just spell out what exactly you want to know? I am a little bit confused, because we are switching periods and
right. No. The point is the point is very simple. The excesses committed by IPKF.
Excesses. Firstly,
how do you view this?
Let us face reality.
Was it?
No. Let us face reality.
Right.
Let us face reality. War is a human right violation.
Okay.
You are taking a man's life.
Okay.
And the soldier is taught to save his life and kill the other fellow.
Okay.
So the guy is flown from Lucknow to Jaffna and inducted in operation.
Okay.
He will shoot first.
Acha.
So what we do normally is, before we induct in Eastern sector, I am giving this preamble, and I will take you to Sri Lanka also. I will give you specific incidents.
Okay.
I am not saying there was no human right violation.
Right.
It would be foolish, as the present president at that time, when he was defense secretary, he was saying that it was a zero
casualty.
Zero civilian killing war.
Yeah.
There is no such thing. Civilians are always killed, either purposely or incidentally, or they come, the so-called collateral damage.
Right.
So here, we should basically, we are teaching them.
Okay.
When we went in 80s, there was no such lessons being taught. Firstly, because Geneva Convention itself is being activated, because it has become a major international, human rights have become a major international political issue.
Okay.
Before that, nobody cared. History is full of wars where thousands were killed, wholesale assassinations took place. The Vietnam War was the first eye-opener. Slowly the armies revised. UN also revised its. There are now as many as 11 protocols.
Okay.
So in Sri Lanka, when we went, firstly, many of the troops were not prepared. We have a school, a counterinsurgency warfare school, where the troops are put through. There are in northeastern sector, there are core counterinsurgency schools where they are told how to specifically do it without saving human lives. This is what army is doing. And the other problem in combat area is the people don't give evidence. You see, army has to act court-martial a fellow when people give evidence. Victims are always scared. And in Sri Lanka, there was no rule of law. The policemen were there. The government was there. We were an extraneous force. We had no written mandate. We were told to disarm the LTTE. And so there is a legal anomaly also. This was never attended to. So at least in 2 cases, I thought I had written also about this. One in Valvetiturai, where there was an ambush, and the battalion retaliated when it loses temper.
That was in 89.
And they opened fire. That the army in 87 didn't have a structured thing. I was handled all Amnesty International complaints from human rights. Everything was dumped on me. I am indigenous guy. I am ensuring my sources, parents, family, who are my sources were LTT guys. I didn't produce anybody from heaven. They were living in LTT and passing on information. So I ensured my sources, families are saved, and they are saved. In Madras also they were studying. So they would periodically tell me, sir, our family is moving area so and so, no ambush please. So it is, you see, you need to have a structure. Now there is a structure in army. For instance, in J&K, I actually in 2000, I think 2010, I think, I went to Sri Lanka. They invited me to speak at the KDU at the university where Rajapaksa addressed. It was after the war. It was a sort of a triumphalistic thing where myself, General Katoch, and we were invited, and I chaired a session. There, Rajapaksa said it is a 0 civilian casualty. So at the end of it, I got up and asked him. I was the only guy to ask him the question. How can you have a 0 casualty? Let us not, what do you call, the British word they use in election. It's called poodle faking. This kind of thing. I said, we have casualties. There are 2,138 cases of in J&K. We said, kindly State Human Rights Commission must collect them and collect prima facie evidence and then hand it over to us. So there it was some, I don't remember the exact figure. It was in 3 digits. The cases. And army took exemplary thing. For instance, when a major was accused of raping a woman, there was a public hearing of a court martial. It is never allowed. But the public was allowed to hear. You know, the countries must take this kind of measure. But ours was the imperial army, so it is graduating. We are now more aware. Troops are more aware now. Originally, the troops were their palm. The palm was felt. The pictures, if it is rough, they will select them. and teach them. Now the guy has to 10th class minimum.
Right.
So there is greater awareness.
Right. Thank you, Colonel. So
And these two instances, I actually wrote also.
Right.
In my own channel. I read that this must be as an example, but of course nobody was prepared to hear. Conveniently.
Right. So, Mr. Heblikar or Commodore Roy, Rao, you have anything more to add?
No, I don't have anything further to add.
Oh, fine, sir. On the book?
No, I had to say what I had to say. I've said.
You have said. Thank you. Mr. Heblikar?
Yeah, I think the number of things that the book could be famous.
Okay.
And there are a few things which I also agree with what has been said in the book.
Okay.
The first is that when you deal with your neighbors, you deal with families which have been, living on both sides of the border.
Okay.
There are familial links, there are emotional links, there are social links, and that needed to be looked at in a very, very serious case.
Okay.
For example, when at the beginning of 2000, when I was in Delhi, I used to tell. When I was to go for a briefing, I used to say that if you are going to Myanmar, you should take the Chief Minister of Manipur or Nagaland or the members of parliament who understand what the local situation is.
Right.
And for example, I have also indicated, like, for example, interests of contiguous states. The High Commission of India or the Indian diplomatic mission is not the only spokesperson for the country.
Okay.
There are other channels that are necessary. For example, when I was in Sri Lanka, at that point of time, I recommended that we have a Sri Lanka-India Parliamentary Friendship Association.
Okay.
Where members of parliament on both sides of the divide, Park Strait, meet and discuss things which are, important to them.
Okay.
How does a member of parliament in Delhi look at a member of parliament in Sri Lanka? I think there are certain divergences that need to be reduced. For example, in Myanmar today, we have an embassy in Rangoon and we have 3 other consulates. Okay, and both these countries are different kettle of fish.
Okay.
Allows Indian diplomats the maximum freedom to move around.
Okay.
It is not perhaps possible in Myanmar. So what we recommend is to make the embassies work easier. You have this parliamentary association.
Okay.
You have got 4 bordering states of India with Myanmar: Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur, and Mizoram. You have state assemblies. Why don't you, get them to develop with what the other side is doing? So we need to create more structures where there is avenue for better understanding. The second point in the book, which
excuse me, sir. With regard to the members of parliament, was there any interaction that took place between MPs of India and Sri Lanka?
I think one should credit the former High Commissioner, Mr. Nirupam Sen, who discussed this. He decided that yes, I think there were 1 or 2 meetings.
Okay.
And the meetings, I think, created some way forward. And I think these things, because if you look at the Indian Parliament's website, there are some 7 to 8 associations, friendship associations. And all of them are doing good work. I think for neighboring countries where languages are common, culture is common, we require more such platforms to discuss.
Fine. You were saying, okay. Right. Then we were about to say the second point.
Yeah, the second point is the commentary in the book, which talks about the letters exchanged between Haksar and Thomas Abraham regarding why the foreign policy needs to be not necessarily a standalone one. There should be inputs from everybody else.
Okay.
And he also made a comment about what role different agencies have in foreign policy formulations, and how do you articulate it?
Okay, okay.
And lastly, how PN Haksar differed from the Prime Minister on certain foreign policy formulations. And I think there's one reference to there being some kind of great surprise or GP's association with the talks. So what were the considerations? That has not been fully explained. Perhaps I think somewhere along the professor or Ashik would tell us as to what made them bring this aspect out.
Right, right.
I think these are where this could perhaps become a textbook, so to say, in areas where India's relationship with its southern neighbor is concerned.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Heblikar. Commodore Vasan, you have anything to say?
Just very briefly, I wanted to narrate
Please.
a personal experience
Yes.
because it's relevant to the discussion. When I was a regional commander, I called on then Chief Minister Jayalalitha. By that time, already both the state and the center were anti-LTTE. Many measures were put into place.
This was when? This was when?
2002.
2002.
2001 to 2002, 2003, I was here.
Acha,
and, there used to be regular meetings, particularly with the security situation. But also, as you are aware, at that time, you did have a ceasefire. But there invariably used to be ceasefire violations and also the repatriation which was going on. I remember on one of the meetings, she clearly brought out, particularly about the land bridge, because I think Ranatunga was the one who, on his visit to India, said, we should perhaps start looking at the land bridge. And
Ranil Vikramasinghe.
Yeah, she.
Ranil said. Ranil,
sorry.
Ranil, not Ranatunga. Ranil Vikramasinghe.
My apologies. So she wanted the views, and I know all the about 15, 16 members were all sitting around her. None of them speak as usual, and all of them said this. So, she was asking me about the opinion of this land bridge, etc. So, various issues were concerned. She immediately called the chief secretary. She wanted the letter to be sent out to the center saying that the land bridge should not be allowed.
Yes.
So, so this is the kind of thing which was there. The second thing is about Chief Minister Jayalalitha is it's available in the public domain, which is about the vision document of Tamil Nadu 2013. So in that it's clearly brought out that deep sea fishing is something that the state should adopt. If you looked at the Tamil Nadu Fisheries Development Corporation website, they did not even have half a deep sea fishing vessel. And and Professor Suryanarayan is very fond of saying all the time that it's only in the Indian exclusive economic zone that fish die of old age because nobody catches them, particularly Indians. And it's only Taiwan and Chinese and Indonesians who come here. So just to lighten the mood, I thought I'll quote these two incidents. But on the point that was reinforced by Mr. Pratap Heblikar on keeping the states, engaged with discussions with their neighbors, whether it is West Bengal or Gujarat or Rajasthan or Sri Lanka. There's only one point. Look at a situation when Tamil Nadu is supporting the LTTE and the center does not want to support it. Now, how do you take the state on board? So this is a tricky situation that you're going to have on board. So there would be perhaps some areas and issues where the state center may have to bulldoze and have it in the interest of long-term national security. This is debatable, but I feel that this is something that will like Mamata will not agree to anything that Modi does, whereas it may still be in the national interest to have Tista River dispute. So this is something that will continue to be complicated in a democracy where your federal system of governance is very different. So I thought I'll make these observations.
Right, sir. But I will make a couple of points. That is, one is this deep sea fishing project has been launched, in 2017 by the central government, along with the Tamil Nadu government. But there is some, the scheme has not taken off. Project has not taken off. It has not taken off because of, I think, the cost sharing formula is not what should I say, acceptable, or it doesn't satisfy the fishermen. I think fishermen, even at the time of the launch of the scheme, I brought to the attention of central government and state government that the fishermen are asked to contribute much more than what they could. That's my impression, and that's perhaps that's one of the reasons why the deep sea fishing hasn't become a big success. Coming to that land bridge, do you think that that's Jayalalitha was right in opposing it tooth and nail?
No, on the first question, you are right about the deep sea fishing. No, but as I understand, I was monitoring this closely. The center was supposed to give something like 50% of the money for acquiring the vessel. The state was given to say 30 or 35%. And the balance was to be given by the fisherman or the owner through the banks. So I thought it was a good arrangement, just that our people are not tuned to multi-day fishing. They want to come back every day, and it's only very recently.
No, it is 30, 30, 20, 20.
No,
it is,
it's only taking up recently. Till 2013, there was no deep sea fishing.
That's fine.
It's only Keralites for tuna fishing. They used to go all the way all over.
Sir, can I intervene in this time?
Yes, sorry?
Can I add something to what Vasan said?
The second one, I'll finish on the land bridge. Land bridge, in my opinion, was a good initiative. I think we should still pursue it. That is how I feel.
It should be pursued. Okay. Right. Okay, Ashik, you can you can make
what Vasan sir said.
Ashik, you can now make your response.
So no. I want to first add to Vasan sir, then I want to go into my response because Professor told me I should just talk about the book alone, nothing else. So, sir, I did my study on the fishermen after this 2017. This the financial working. During my study in Ramakrishnan and other places, the money that you saw talking about 30-30, 20-20. The government also said they can go to the banks and get loans, but the banks want heavy collateral, which fishermen did not have. Some of them, they're willing to even pledge their houses, but banks were not convinced with pledging houses because most of the lands which are closer to the coast, the CSR was there, CRZ was there, coastal regulatory zone was there, and then the banks were not willing to give collateral and give loans for the fishermen, and that became a non-starter. Just want to add that. Okay.
What about licensed fishing in the Sri Lankan side? Was there any effort made? Bonofer?
So, licensed fishing, okay. Not from the Indian side, in the sense like, yes, fish we don't have in our side. We don't have the catch. People go beyond.
Sri Lankan waters.
Yes, the problem is most of the boats, vessels, are not owned by the fishermen, sir. They're owned by the big business houses, big people, right? And they have the money. I was talking to a few families in various places, and they said if he doesn't bring the catch, his family is gonna die out of hunger that night. The owner will not give him the money. It's quite clear. 2 days, if he's not bringing anything, then the third day owner is not going to give him the boat. Many cases when the people are not able to bring the catch, their wives, even the wedding, the tali as they call it, they will have to pledge that so that they can get the vessels next day when they want to go to the seesaw. It is, what we see here is quite different from what is there. In theory, it all looks nice, but in practical, what happens is these owners fleece the people, and some of them take the families as bonded laborers. And husband will not see his wife for 1 week because she's working in the owner's house because her husband did not bring enough money or enough cash. So, with regard to this deep sea fishing, so that is.
See, deep sea fishing is not peculiar to Tamil Nadu. It is all over the country. Our boats are all traditional boats, family boats. Okay, some are motorized, some are mechanized. Nobody's got refrigerator. Nobody goes for deep fishing. It's a very small percentage at all. So it is not peculiar to Tamil Nadu. It is throughout the country we're in the same boat.
True, sir. But there is this huge lobby which does not want to invest into the deep sea fishing. Though the government of India will sanction money. In fact, Vasan sir mentioned about Jayalalitha sanctioning nearly 80 crores. She had set apart in the for procurement of deep sea fishing vessels, but that was a non-starter. I remember Vasan sir, I and Professor Suryanarayan, we were at the one of the meetings with the Vasan, I forgot. I don't think you mentioned about it. You were in the Secretariat meeting the secretary, and then in fact the secretary asked his colleague, because in the government of Tamil Nadu's website they said they had 2 fishing boats, deep sea fishing vessels. So he asked his colleague what happened. We told them that there is vessels there, and he asked his colleague what happened. How come they say that it's mentioned in the website? And then colleague said, sorry, we have no idea that we have deep sea fishing vessel at all. So you have the government of Tamil Nadu's website saying there is deep sea vessel, and their own people saying they don't have a deep sea fishing vessels.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashik.
Websites are not made under oath of secrecy, no? There is no oath.
Okay.
True, sir.
So, Professor, you can take over.
So 1 more
minutes.
thing,
No, so Professor, let the Professor complete. No, it is now his turn. Professor, you can now. 15 minutes. 1-5. 8:36. It should be over.
To begin with, I want to thank all the panelists.
Sir, come closer, sir. We can't hear you. Just come closer and speak.
To begin with, I want to thank all the panelists for their comments, both good and bad. I want to start with what Heblikar mentioned, which is going to be a major problem confronting India as to how to associate the contiguous Indian states with a neighborhood policy. In fact, that is one of my major conclusions on which I have written in several places. I recall a meeting in Kohima on neighborhood policy in which the chief minister, when he spoke, he also mentioned that the government of India should take greater interest in the Nagas in Myanmar. And I told him this is the first time that a Nagaland chief minister is speaking about his kinfolk in the other parts of the country. Most of the speakers somehow made their comments on the basis of sovereign states. That is, Sri Lanka is sovereign, so India has no business to interfere. Bangladesh is sovereign, so India has no business to. I think in South Asia, if we work on this principle, we will never make any progress. Because what happens in South Asia is you're so intermingled and so intertwined. What happens in one country has the effect on the other. If the Hindus are converted to Islam, as takes place in Bangladesh or in Pakistan, or if the Hindu places of worship are destroyed, we naturally will be affected. Similarly, the Muslim places of worship are destroyed in India, the Muslims in the other countries will be affected. So we have to take this reality into consideration and work out a particular policy. In fact, when W.T. Jayasinghe met Rasgotra, who was Foreign Secretary in 1983, Rasgotra told him, which I mentioned in the book, if there is a fire in the neighbor's house, we cannot remain silent. We must ensure that the fire does not spread to India. And therefore, we have to evolve such a policy. Now, to the next point that I want to mention is my own association with GP, because GP's appointment as a special envoy was not to the liking of Haksar as well as Thomas Abraham. Now, I met him twice when he was a Vice Chancellor in Jawaharlal Nehru University. That was mainly academic discussion. But in October 1983, I wrote a very lengthy article on Sri Lanka ethnic myths and facts in Economic and Political Weekly. Since it was my lengthy article and since it was in some ways very explosive, I told Krishnaraj, the editor, do not put my name, put it as special correspondent, which he did. Next week, I went to Delhi and I called on my good friend, Ambassador A.K. Damodaran, who was working with GP in the policy planning division. And I told him, sir, did you read this article? I have written that. Then he told me, we liked the article so much that we circulated to all the embassies as a backgrounder. And then he immediately telephoned GP and told him that article is written by Professor Suryanarayan, he's sitting before me. Why don't you meet him? GP was at that time staying in Lodi Road. Then I called on him and had a long chat with him. I chat with him on 2 other occasions also. Now, I consider GP to be a scholar statesman. The main argument is that Tamil cannot be an honest mediator when the Tamil issue is being involved. Now, if that was so, we had after Vesgotra retired, we had Ramesh Bhandari, a North Indian, as the foreign secretary. Was he able to bring about any peace in Sri Lanka? Not merely that, the Timpu entered in a failure, he frog-marched the militants and all, which I have mentioned. So to whether it is North Indian or South Indian, or take the case of Haksar. Haksar himself is a Kashmiri Pandit. Can we say from that that Haksar's policy towards various foreign countries was determined by Kashmiri Pandit's policy? So I think we have to get over this. You can be a Tamil and still have a national perception and all. The third point that I would love to mention is on the fishing issue, which took up a lot of time and all. Now, Commodore Udai mentioned one statement of fishermen straying into Sri Lankan waters as my point of view, which Vasan knows is not. Now, I have used the straying into Sri Lankan waters in the chapter on TULF and India. What was their attitude towards India? Where I had pleaded, I requested among the TULF trio that our fishermen are getting killed, and according to UN law of the sea, Udai Rao, I am repeating, according to UN law of the sea, poaching into another country's waters is civilian offense. We do not shoot the fishermen of other countries who poach into Indian waters. We arrest them, we hand them over to the Coast Guard, and then they do that thing. Now, straying was used there. Otherwise, I used in the whole book that Tamil Nadu was a backyard from which the LTT war machine got its fuel. I've also mentioned how they were able to escape after killing Padmanabha in Kodambakam, how with the help of various sources they escaped. And to use only one straying as my attitude towards straying of the Sri Lankan waters, Commodore Rao, I must mention to you that is unfair to me. In fact, I have done a lot of work on the fisheries. Vasan knows about the conflict over the fisheries in the Park Bay region, where I have mentioned how fishermen get so deep into Sri Lankan waters. I went to Pesalai, a fishing village near Mannar, where the fishermen told me, sir, you be here tonight. 500 meters away, you can see the Indian fishing boats. I have also told in a meeting of fishermen which was convened in New Delhi, they never mentioned about, they mentioned only about seeding a Katatu and all those things. And I told them at the end, you never mentioned or faced the question whether Sri Lankan Tamil fishermen have the right to fish in their own waters. So I've done detailed work. And then, in fact, Ashik, I want to make a correction to you. And in answer to Heblikar, that in 1976 agreement, we permitted the Sri Lankan fishermen to fish in Indian, licensed Sri Lankan Indian fishermen to fish in Indian waters. So I had suggested that licensed Indian fishermen should be permitted to fish in Sri Lankan waters for 5 nautical miles, and Sri Lankan fishermen in turn should be permitted to fish in the exclusive economic zone. But then, and this was also suggested both by Jayalalitha and by Karunanidhi to the central government. But it never got out the ground. The Sri Lankans also took no interest. Now, only way by which the problem can be solved is to make use of this challenge as an opportunity. and consider the Parkway as a common heritage and try to reinvigorate the sea jointly, ban the trawling, allow Sri Lankan fishermen to fish for 3 days, allow Indian fishermen to fish for 3 days. What type of fishing nets can be used, what type of fishing boats can be used, and all those things can be decided by a Parkway authority in which representatives of India, Sri Lanka, Sri Lankan Navy, Indian Navy, and all participate. If the Sri Lankan Navy, if the Sri Lankan government takes the issue of our fishermen getting into Sri Lankan waters to the International Court of Justice, our face will be in mud. The Sri Lankan government is not doing for various other reasons, but suppose they decide to take the issue to the International Court of Justice, our issue will be, our face should be in mud. Now, the book had been written purely from the point of view of Haksar's letters to Thomas Abraham, which has appeared in Jairam Ramesh's book. When the book was launched for the first time, Jairam Ramesh said, an author gets great happiness when he writes the book. When he gets good reviews, he's doubly happy. But he's more than happy when a book is written on a book. And this is a book on a book. And therefore, I have not gone into details of India-Sri Lanka policy and all, which I have done elsewhere, and which I will do later on if Ashik joins me in another book venture and all those things. May I conclude with this, because otherwise you will,
yes, sir.
You will curse me.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much. Mr. Ashik, you have something to say? Mr. Ashik is not there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, sir, just want to say that thank you. It was a great pleasure to work with Professor Suryanarayan when he invited me to work with him. I just said, okay, yes, this is a wonderful opportunity to work with him. I actually want to thank, first I should thank Mr. Shashi Nair and the chairperson of this session, Mr. Ramakrishnan, for this wonderful opportunity where our book is being discussed here. Thank you. And then working on a book this year is quite intriguing. One is, for academics, most of us are used to working in the library. But this year, we are so dependent on our personal library and online sources. This is quite intriguing. So that is something important. So just wanted to thank the Press Institute for this wonderful opportunity. And I would like to thank Vasan sir, because when we wanted to publish this book, we approached Vasan sir. He said, yes, Center for Asian Studies is publishing this, though we are all part of Center for Asian Studies. Okay. Vasan sir approved it, and then thank you, Vasan sir. So coming back to your first question, the book, with regard to the full accord, there are two more books which is going to talk about accord, which is likely to be published by end of this year. So that will exclusively talk about accord, why accord did not go well. So that book is on the pipeline. And with regard to, Commodore Udai Rao, who, when he mentioned about Kachitivo, so you mentioned about the government of India saying to Supreme Court that it was never part of Indian side. But again, there is this.
I didn't say that. I said they said it was never ceded to Sri Lanka.
Okay, so the fact is there is this receipt of tax paid to the British government by Raja of Ramnad. So why do you pay Raja of Ramnad?
Oh, yeah, Zameen
of Ramnad.
Zameen of Ramnad.
You pay tax only if you own particular.
Yes, I've heard about that. Yes,
and Professor also mentioned about the 1974 and 76. We had these two agreements because of Kachitivu. And why do we have agreements if government of India sees that it is never part of the Indian side?
So yeah, but but that issue was raised in Supreme Court. That's all I'm saying.
True, because that is mentioned in the Supreme Court. But I was just looking at the MEA website. MEA website is quite clear that these two agreements are there for Kachtivu purpose. So that
Right.
is
Okay.
why it is. So I think you're right. Thank you,
May I
sir.
supplement what Ashik has said? Ramakrishnan?
Yes, Solomon, there are two guests from Sri Lanka. I want to give them some opportunity. 1 minute. You can. Sugu and Jatin, do you have anything to say? Mr. Sugu? Sugu, Jatin, you can chip in briefly and then let Professor respond to your observation.
Actually, I just listen.
Right, fine.
நான் பேசுறது கேக்குதா உங்களுக்கு? Sorry.
சொல்லுங்க. சுகு அவர் பேசுறார், ஜதின் பேசுறார்.
Right. Okay.
அவர் பேசிட்டு நீங்க சொல்லுங்க. 1 minute. Jatin, you please complete what you want to say.
Actually, I don't have a particular any comment.
Right. No problem. It's all right. Fine.
Yeah, but very interesting book I just read out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jatin. Sugu, நீங்க சொல்லுங்க. Sugu.
I read about that, but that book also, I feel the Haksar period is the Soviet era, the Soviet bloc also. At the time, the Soviet, the Cold War era.
Right.
But the Haksar period, at the period, the plantation Tamils. I also feeling at the time the Seshadri, Srimao pact.
Mute ஆயிடுச்சு.
ஐயோ.
அவர் மியூட் பண்ணிட்டார்.
சுகு, என்ன பண்ணிட்டீங்க? ஹலோ சுகு.
மியூட் பண்ணி பிரஸ் பண்ணிட்டார்.
மியூட் பண்ணிட்டாரா? சாரி. ஓகே. சரி, அவர் Professor, நீங்க சொல்லுங்க. You please complete what you want to say. That is so that
I just wanted to say.
About in the end of the book, the mention the Ganges River issue, Ganga River issue, the Prime Minister Gujarat period. That way also, the sensitivity of the border state, that is very important thing. I also thinking that way, but. Correctly he mentioned the LTT is the Frankenstein monster. I also accepted that, but the Haksar period is different, but the GP period also different. That way I am thinking, but fishermen too, I think in the deep water fishing only the solution, as well as the sustainable fishing. That we save the underwater botanical garden and other things. That way the two countries also discuss and solve that problem. Okay.
Professor, please respond and then conclude the discussion.
I started working on Kachativu.
Yes, sir.
Because when Jayalalitha was the chief minister, unfurling the national flag from the ramparts of Red Fort, she said, "We'll take Kachativu by force if necessary."
Yes.
And that made me think, because international agreements have a sanctity of their own, and however wrong it may be, we cannot abrogate it unilaterally. And can the interests of the Tamil Nadu fishermen be protected without abrogating the agreement? Then I started working on it, and I found that all the records relating to the ownership of Kachativu have been taken away from Tamil Nadu archives in New Delhi. There are sufficient secondary records to say that Kachativu belonged to the Zamindari Raja Ramnath. And when Zamindari was abolished in 1949, it became part of the Madras Presidency.
Yes.
Now, New Delhi took a stance that it is not part of India, it is a disputed territory.
Yes.
And
yes.
So, when the line was drawn, then generally the principle of median line is adopted while drawing the maritime boundary line. But when it came to Kachativu, the median line was deviated so the island could fall on the Sri Lankan side. Now, Karnanidhi, who was the chief minister at that time, should have filed a case that it is an Indian territory, and if Indian territory is to be ceded, the constitution has to be amended. But he did not do that. West Bengal Chief Minister B.C. Roy, when Berberi was considered disputed territory by Jawaharlal Nehru, filed the case and the Supreme Court said, if Indian territory has to be ceded, the constitution has to be amended. It's only years later when Jayalalitha filed the case that Karunanidhi also followed. Now,
Yes.
both on licensing of fishermen as well as getting the island Katativu a lease in perpetuity, that is 10 biga in reverse. I was the first one to suggest it. It became the policy of both Karunanidhi government and Jayalalitha government.
Right.
But then Sri Lanka was not interested, and New Delhi does not want to accept the mistake that it has committed in 1974. Anyway, even if Katativu, we get back Katativu, let us say, the problem is not going to be solved because our fishermen go deep into Sri Lankan waters and play havoc with the livelihood of the Sri Lankan Tamil fishermen. And as I told you, if the case goes to the International Court of Justice, Tamil Nadu government says, the Indian government says, the fishermen face will be in the mud. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me thank each and every one of you for having made this event highly successful and very stimulating discussion.
Ramakrishnan,
Yes, sir.
I have a small intervention on this fishing
Cholunga.
issue.
Okay.
In
Okay.
actually 2007, Rajapaksa invited me and Mr. Devasahayam
Okay.
and one other media man.
Okay.
We went as his guests. We spent half a day. We discussed all issues. We referred to Professor Suryanarayan. He has written a book also on the fishermen's issue. And MS Swaminathan committee has recommended how it should be coastal areas of both Sri Lanka and India should be jointly developed so that it becomes productive. And Mr. Devasahayam had a contact in Asian Development Bank. He spoke to him. He said they can explore financing this. So we gave a broad outline to Mr. Rajapaksa. The war, eastern part of the war has been won. Now they have not started the northern part. So he was willing to listen also. And we said if it is then I touched upon the North Sea issue also. I don't know whether you know, between Ireland and Norway, there was a dispute like this, and this was attempted. So he was willing that it can be a joint board with investment to develop, and the fishermen can be controlled by both sides. But you know, these productive things, both sides were playing politics. We were the goodwill guys. It has no chance when there is a war on and you are on the winning side. So it became a casualty. After that, Mr. Rajapaksa never raised the issue. So I wanted to update this. And one other commercial, you see, in 2008, I made a presentation at Center for Joint Warfare Studies. It was a presentation on Indian Expeditionary Forces. On Sri Lanka, I made a presentation on intelligence in Sri Lanka. I have just put it in public domain. All this time it was in the proceedings of the St. George. It is uploaded in a SAG website. It's a long paper. It will analyze the shortcomings, everything. It is sort of addresses the whole intelligence perception. And it is available in my website also. I wanted to do this bit of commercial also, so that people are informed when they question me also.
Fine. So,
Ramakrishna, before you finish, I want to thank Professor Suryanarayan for his comments.
Okay.
Okay. So this is just a discussion.
Yes, sir, certainly. So thank you all for your participation. And of course, there were a couple of participants there are a couple of participants from Sri Lanka and one from Saudi also. He joined the discussion briefly and then he had to leave. But anyway, so thank you all for making this evening stimulating.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
so
Thanks
much.
a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
everybody.
Sashi.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Shashi and Mr.
gentlemen.
Ramakrishnan for conducting this so well.
Yeah, I think Ramakrishnan did a good job. So thank you. You had all these heavyweights in check, having the heavyweights in check. So that's good.
I know very well.
And I think you, yeah.
I also visit to his patient home regularly at the time in India.
Very nice to have you for this evening's program. Also, I think Ramakrishnan was very generous. He gave Colonel Hariharan a long time to speak, so that was good. I might not have done that, but you did it, so that's good. So, Professor Suryanarayan, thank you very much again for giving us an opportunity. We are looking forward to the other books that Ashik has mentioned. So we will be happy to host it like this later. All right. So, well, I think it's been a very fascinating discussion. And I got interested in national security and foreign policy thanks to Mr. Heblikar. Mr. Chengap, of course, is not here. And, Commodore Vasan and Mr. D.S. Rajan, who was heading, C3 as before. And it's been more than a passing interest for me nowadays to listen to these discussions. The only disappointing thing was we didn't have enough numbers to show. But perhaps, we will, I think some people, sort of catch it up later on Facebook since we are streaming. But despite the streaming on Facebook, I think a lot of points came up, so that was also, quite good. So thank you all and good night. I think we should, Mr. Heblikar, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was only wanting to say that if this was not on Facebook, there could have been many other items that could have been brought to the table. So there have been criticisms of the government and its agencies that could have been addressed. Unfortunately, I neither have the liberty nor the fellow Commodore Rao to talk about an organization which I served.
No, I'm feeling very sticky.
Yeah, so it's not touchy. It's an important thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think I seem to have rubbed too many people the wrong way today.
No. I think you rubbed them the right way. What I'm saying is the entire Sri Lanka episode in one way was something which was based on very poor political appreciation of the situation. Mm-hmm. The others had to carry
Quite true.
Carry it to the graves. That's all. Yes. Anyway, thank you, Sashi, Professor, and Bonofer and Ramakrishnan for the opportunity. Next time, if there isn't on, all of us can have a frank chat.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we might not stream it on Facebook. I think this is probably, the first time. So we'll have more of this later, the fireside chats. Thank you all very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Meeting.